Okay, great. I had the privilege of learning Yeshivat HaRav in the late 1990s. It was a wonderful experience. I've had the privilege of knowing Rav Mosheh Lichtenstein and his father before him for a long time. He's a huge Talmid Chacham. There's nothing better that I think any of us could think to do today than hear a Shiur, especially from Rav Mosheh. So without further ado, Rav Mosheh Lichtenstein.
Today, Rabbi, the late 1990s was the last time I was actually physically in Camp Stone, so it's maybe a matim to give this shiur. Thank you very much for inviting me. I'd like to discuss, even though we're in Shivasar Tammuz, to discuss mostly Tisha B'Av topics, of course, because we'll be going on to Tisha B'Av. I'd like to focus upon one particular element of Tisha B'Av. Does everyone hear all right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'd like to begin though with a question and sort of focus the topic. We all know that the Gemara tells us there's an isur on Tisha B'Av to study Torah. A person is prohibited to study Torah on Tisha B'Av, just like an Avel is. However, there are some exceptions. The exceptions include Yirmiyahu, or more accurately, the negative parts of Yirmiyahu, Drim Hara'im Shabi Yirmiyahu, the parts of Yirmiyahu which deal with Churban and destruction. It's mutter to study on Tisha B'Av. It's mutter to study Hilchas Avelus. It's also mutter to study Sefer Iyov. That's the list that the Gemara Masechet Tanid gives us. Interestingly enough, the Gemara does not give an option to study, for instance, Yechezkel, even though Yechezkel discusses the Churban often. But Yechezkel basically, for the first 3 chapters, is dealing with the Churban, but the Brayta doesn't say you can study Sefer Yechezkel and Tisha B'Av. There are many other chapters in Tanakh which deal with the Churban. Presumably, you can't study them. Iyov, on the other hand, who does not discuss Beit HaMikdash at all, Iyov may have very well been a goy, but he discusses suffering. You can study Iyov on Tisha B'Av. You can't study Yechezkel, who discusses Churban. You can learn the Iyov, who discusses suffering, which really tells us that Tisha B'Av has many elements, and it's focused upon the suffering, maybe even more so than the actual destruction of the Mikdash. Now, though, I'd like to sharpen this point. The discussion about the Mikdash has many ramifications. On the one hand, Kedusha has been destroyed. There's the actual destruction. There's the loss of life, the horrendous, tragic loss of life. There is Am Yisrael going to Galut. There's the chilul, the violation of all the kedusha within, the kohanim, the klei sharet, and so on. And now you can view this from different perspectives. From the perspective of Kadosh Baruch Hu, right? God is Melech Machem Lachim. He told Am Yisrael to do certain things. But there's a whole philosophy, historiography behind this. Why did the Churban come? Because Am Yisrael sinned. What did Yirmiyahu warn them? He told them this and that. What did how did Yechezkel analyze and tell us what's the meaning and significance of the Churban? And so on and so forth. How does Sefer Eicha begin, though? Sefer Eicha doesn't begin with discussing the spiritual, metaphysical significance of the Churban. It begins with discussing the man-God, or the Am Yisrael Kadosh Baruch Hu relationship. Eicha yeshva vadad ha'ir rabat yam hayta ke'almana. In other words, Eicha is focusing not so much on God being a majestic king, Melech Malchei Melachim, who told Am Yisrael to obey him, and Am Yisrael disobeyed him, and Am Yisrael did not follow the mitzvot, etc., etc. Rather, it begins with the fact that Am Yisrael has lost a relationship. And this is the real drama of Eicha. Yechezkel has a different perspective. Yechezkel really talks about the fact how God runs the world. Is it Kiddush Hashem? Is it Chilul Hashem? How what happens when Am Yisrael disobeys Kadosh Baruch Hu's guidance, etc. Eicha is not discussing all of that. Eicha is discussing the experience of the Churban and primarily the experience of loss. And now let's really go into Eicha a little to understand this. Eicha begins with Parak Aleph. Or it's like this. Eicha, right, can be easily divided into Parak Aleph, Beit, and Dalid. Right, all of them begin with the word Eicha. Eicha Yeshva Gadad. Eicha Ya'iv Ve'apo. Eicha Yuam Zahav. All of them have an alphabetical sequence. All of them 22 psukim. And then you have Parak Gimel. Parak Hey is a whole different story. Leave that aside at the moment. Parak Gimel is it stands on one level opposite Prakim, Aleph, Bet, and Dalid. Parak Gimel, if you remember, and I hope you remember, has a triple Aleph Bet, meaning Parak Aleph, Bet, and Dalid is 3 Aleph Bets. Parak Gimel is 3 Aleph Bets. Parak Gimel is arranged in sequence, but the rhythm of the psukim is very different. Each one has 6 words, a very short rhythm which moves rapidly forward, unlike the meandering psukim of Prakim, Aleph, Bet, and the like. And in a sense, it seems to be a world of itself. Right? It doesn't begin with Eicha, it begins Ani HaGever. But now, and what does Parak Gimel deal with? It deals with Tziduk HaDin. What is the meaning of what is the cause of the Churban? Right? Presumably, he begins to ask, why did this happen? And then he says, and this is the climax of Parak Gimel. מפי עליון לא תצא הרעות והטוב, מה יתעונן אדם חי גבר על חטאיו, נחפשה דרכינו ונחקור ונשוב עד השם, ניסה לבבינו כפיים ולקל בשמיים. But the climax of Eicha Parak Gimel is presumably it's Kadosh Baruch Hu is not to blame, he's not responsible, it's our responsibility. Am Yisrael sinned, Kadosh Baruch Hu brought about the punishment they promised or they threatened, and the conclusion is tshuva. In other words, we are the root cause of the Churban, we have to do tshuva. How does the Rambam describe Tisha B'Av and Shras Tammuz for that matter as well? I'll read to you, if someone here can share the screen, b'vakasha, but I'll read to you the Rambam. It's Tanit Perek, Hichot Taniyot Perek Hey. Yesh Sham Yamim. One moment, I'll bring it up. Moment. One second. 1 minute. Just 1 second. All Okay, excuse me. Here we are. Take a look here. Yesh sham yamim shekol Yisrael mitanim behem mipnei hatzarot she'eru behem. There are days that all of us fast. Kedei le'orer halevavot v'liftoach darkei tshuva. Right, to arouse the levavot, meaning your souls, your emotions, etc. Liftoach darkei tshuva. Basically, to send us down the path of tshuva. Like this will remind us of the past. In the past, people said they paid the price. In the past, they sinned and they paid the price. Therefore, when we remind ourselves and we learn the lessons of the past, we will learn to improve. And now he describes like Tisha B'Av and Shos Tammuz, etc. But the basic point is, the Rambam sees this as a didactic idea. Why do we fast? To spur us on to tshuva, to encourage us to do tshuva. Now let's go back to Yirmiyahu. What is Yirmiyahu telling us? No, maybe I'll bring this up also. 1 second. Okay, here we are in Eicha Per Gimel. Okay, here we are in Eicha Per Gimel. After Yirmiyahu devotes the first half of the parak to describing all the tzarot, what the Rambam called B'zichron Dvarim Eilu Nashuva Hitiv. For instance, Zechor Anu Merudi La'Navarosh. Remember all the tzaros, how humiliated I was, how much I suffered. Zechor Tizkor, I remember this. V'tashuach Lai Nafshi, my soul will be so humble and downtrodden. And now he moves on. What's the lesson of all this? Presumably, Mipil Yom, the Tzevet of God, this is not the root of the problem. It is Am Yisrael. Why do you complain? It's your sins that caused this. Gever al chata'at, the chatim are yours. Nach pesad derachenu v'nachkora, v'nashuv ad Hashem. Let us investigate and understand and analyze our behavior. V'nashuv ad Hashem. And this will culminate in Yisal v'veno kapayim v'kel b'shamayim. So in a sense, it seems to be, on the face of it, that the Rambam and Eicha are doing the same thing. And of course, the Rambam is obviously basing himself upon these psukim. Nevertheless, it seems to me the dynamic is very different. And it's this dynamic I like to highlight in Sefer Eicha. Yirmiyahu's real concern is with the relationship. For a moment, just to highlight the topic, I allow myself once more to leave Eicha for a second. Think for a moment, let's go back to Eov, and think about Kohelet. Right? Eicha, Eov, and Kohelet, all three of them deal with the problem of suffering in the world. All of them deal with the fact, right, Tzadik v'ralo, Hashav v'tovlo. Bad things happen to good people, and good things happen to bad people. Nevertheless, they come from very different emotional perspectives. Kohelet, if you remember, Kohelet from Sukkot, Kohelet is reflecting upon the world. Kohelet is not, he's not discussing God. He's discussing the world. How do I get along? How do I manage with the world? How does the world make? How do I deal with the world? This is the world. And he comments, he observes, he comments. Throughout Sefer Kohelet, he never once talks to God. He always talks to himself. Amarti ani bilibi, amarti bilibi. Look up later on, you'll see he said like 20, 30 times, amarti bilibi. I said to myself, I thought, these are my ideas, he never ever talks about, he never talks to God. He talks about the world, about creation. The Creator is invested in creation. He never talks to the Kadosh Baruch Hu. If you, and on the other hand, if you go to Eov, the whole point, I'll say like this, one of the major dramas of Sefer Eov is Eov's desire to talk to God point blank. He wants to be dugri. He wants to talk to Kadosh Baruch Hu and face to face have a discussion. And there are many, multiple psukim tells all the time. And the good of the drama is exactly this point. His companions say to him, man can't talk to God. Man is too petty, too trivial. And Eov says, no, man talks to God. You argue, you blame. The important thing is you engage God directly. Now, where does Eicha fit in this? So this is exactly what I was trying to say before. Sefer Eicha is coming to tell us, or is coming to illustrate how Yirmiyahu and Am Yisrael try to engage the Kodesh Baruch Hu. And here let's go back to the basic point. God is Melech Malchei Hamlachim. He's the heavenly king. He's also Am Yisrael's husband and wife, the lover and the beloved, Dod and Ra'ayah, Shir HaShirim, because Baruch Hu is a loving parent, and only that, he's also a lover and a beloved to Am Yisrael. What Yirmiyahu really cares about, and this is the crucial point here, what Yirmiyahu cares about the Churban is not the loss of the Mikdash. It's not the fact that the building was destroyed. It's not the fact that Am Yisrael is going to Galut. What he really most cares about is the loss of the relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. The Am Yisrael become an almanah. That Am Yisrael will no longer have the Kadosh Baruch Hu as her husband. The relationship between us and the Kadosh Baruch Hu will be severed. We'll be able to manage the Galut. We can manage in New York. We can manage in Sur and Pumbedita. We can manage in France or North Africa. You can manage in Taiman. You can manage in Camp Stone. But you can't manage at the Kadosh Baruch Hu. You can't manage when the relationship is gone. You can find replacements for the Mikdash, right? Yechezkel already tell us that Beit Knesset is a Mikdash Me'at. It's a replacement. Well, let me give you here a metaphor to get the point across. You have a husband, a family, a husband and a wife. They have a house. They live in the house. Now, obviously, the house is important. Without the house, they're going to be living in the street. Clearly, the house matters to them. Let's say for the average person, his home is probably the biggest financial investment that he'll make over his lifetime. He's invested in his home. The home, within the walls, the home absorbs the dramas of life of the family. The family history is etched into the walls. A home matters a lot. I think we consider it, rightfully so, we consider it a big loss if someone loses his home. Nevertheless, what really matters? If tomorrow morning you're thrown out to the street, the family continues the family. If the family loses the house because of economic problems, because of a fire, because of political reasons, whatever, has their life become is as good as it was before? No. Will they suffer? Yes. Will the family disband? Will the family disintegrate? No. The family remains. It's better to live in a hut, be'ava, ve'achva, ve'shalom, ve'reut, than to live in a castle with alone with a family that's dysfunctional. And if you don't believe me, I'll allow myself to quote Sefer Mishlei on this point. Tov, this is Mishlei, Perek Zayin, Pasuk Aleph. Tov pat chareva v'shalva ba. Better to have dry bread with love, mibayit malei zivchei riv, than to have a castle full of fighting. And if Mishlei wasn't wasn't sure we get the point. He makes another pasuk as well. Tov aruchat yarak ve'avabo. It's better to have a vegetable salad. Mi shor evus, to have ribs v'sinabo. And in other words, what really matters, simply put, you can live with your wife in a sleeping bag on the beach, in an ohel muznach in the middle of nowhere, as long as there's love and harmony. And you cannot, and life is worthless if you live in the most beautiful house with designer decorations and it's full of fighting and disharmony and discord. And this is the real problem. This is the real essence of the Churban. Am Yisrael is thrown out of Eretz Yisrael. Am Yisrael is expelled from the Mikdash. The Mikdash is destroyed by fire. It's a huge tragedy. And we go down a few rungs on the ladder in terms of our existence as a people, as a nation, as Ovdei Hashem. But nevertheless, the essence that we and the Kadosh Baruch Hu remain close to each other remains. Let me remind you of a crucial midrash. If anybody still says V'yiten lecha, so he should be familiar, or if he's studying Masechet Megillah, B'chol makom shegalu shchina imahem. When Am Yisrael goes to the Galut, because Baruch Hu goes along with them. Why? Because the Galut means you've lost your home. You've lost possession. You've lost your title, not your title, you've lost your possession to your land. You've lost your home. But the relationship has not disintegrated. Because Baruch Hu will accompany you. It's the same way, if Chas v'Shalom, whatever, the family goes to Galut, let's say a father is expelled by the government, the family will join him. They won't send him alone. And now this was the dilemma facing Yirmiyahu at the time of the Churban. And let me now explain. Am Yisrael and Kadosh Baruch Hu, quote unquote, live together in the Beit HaMikdash. Right? Kadosh Baruch Hu dwelled in the Mikdash. Ve'asuli Mikdash ve'shachanti betocham. Now, Kadosh Baruch Hu says, I'm destroying the Mikdash. I'm sending you to Galut. What does that mean? It can mean very different things. It can mean, as I said before, you're going to be kicked out of the home. You'll be expelled from the sanctuary, but the relationship will continue. I'll join you in Galut. I'll maintain the relationship. So instead of a castle or a palace, we'll build a Mikdash Ma'at. We'll have a very humble abode in the Galut. But you come to a Beit Knesset, and Beit Knesset, you whisper in God's ear, and you'll say Tfilah Niki Atov, and you'll say Shir Ma'alot, and you'll say Ne'ilah Yom Kippur, and so on. That's one possibility. But there's another possibility, which is the Churban means Kadosh Baruch Hu is walking away. He's going to he'll sever the connection forever. Let me now explain something. Am Yisrael has already been through a cycle of Galut and Geula. We were expelled from Beit Rishon was destroyed. We went to Bavel. We returned to Eretz Yisrael. We built Bayit Sheni. There was a cycle of destruction, redemption. Now we now connect this also to previous cycles, to Mitzrayim, Mamad Har Sinai, Meraglim, return to Eretz Yisrael. As we see a cyclical view of history, and of course, Sefer Shoftim describes a cyclical view of history. Am Yisrael sins, because Baruch Hu punishes them. In Sefer Shoftim, he just hits them. He gives them a few. He hits them a few times, and they return. And you have the cycle, up and down, up and down, up and down. We know, we assume, we know, we experience that Bayit Sheni is a long cycle. But the cycle will eventually will come full circle again. And the Mikdash will be rebuilt. We'll come back to Eretz Yisrael. Baruch Hashem, we'll come back to Eretz Yisrael. The Mikdash will be rebuilt, etc. The time of Yirmiyahu, none of this was experienced. There never was a galut, and what's more important, there never was a return from galut. They had never gone and returned. They had one model. The truth is, I should say more than that. They had one model, which was Aseret HaShvatim. Aseret HaShvatim had been expelled before, and presumably from the time at the time of Yirmiyahu had not returned. I'll add in brackets that the Gemara is machloket about this. There's one thing in the Gemara that Yirmiyahu returns to the Shvatim, and Yoshiyahu actually ruled over them. I think part of the reason the Gemara says this doesn't see it sound like the Psukim is in order basically to let Yirmiyahu have awareness of this kind of cycle. But the Pshuta Mikra is that the Shvatim disappeared, and that's the prevailing opinion in Chazal. And there are opinions in Chazal that have gone. The Gemara says in Sanhedrin, he threw them out. Today, on this day, he threw them out and expelled them. The Gemara says, the same way the day goes and disappears and never returns, so too, Aseret HaShvatim disappeared and never returned. Think for a moment the metaphor of the day. Right? The Gemara says, Aseret HaShvatim go and disappear and never return. A day can be viewed in a linear fashion or a cyclical one. You can come and say, July 7th is gone, July 7th, 2020 is gone forever. July 8th, 2020 is gone forever. July 9th, 2020 will soon be gone forever. You can look at it from a different perspective, though. The sun rose, the sun set, the moon rose, the moon set, etc. Tomorrow will be another day like this tomorrow. The cycle of days repeats itself. Day in, day out, day in, day out. The cycle repeats itself. This is the dilemma there of how to interpret the Siyom of Aseret HaShvatim. And what Yirmiyahu sees in front of him, he says, Chazal have opinions, this is it. Aseret HaShvatim have gone. Certainly, the time of Yirmiyahu, this was the situation. There'd been one galut. Only once Am Yisrael had left Eretz Yisrael. And what happened? I should really say twice if we include Eva Yarden. They never returned. What is the paradigm? That when there is galut, when the Kosh Baruch Hu lowers the boom, that's it. There's no return. It's not perceived as a cycle. It's perceived as gone. Going, gone. This is what is basically perceived, experienced, I should say, in the time of Yirmiyahu. And if you open Sefer Yirmiyahu talks about this occasionally. He mentions them to notice Aseret HaShvatim. He also mentions what happened in Shiloh. 1 second, I'll try to bring this up again. 1 second. Yeah, here. Okay, 1 second. Take a look at his Yirmiyahu Perek Zayin. Take a look. Ki lechu Pasuk Yud Bet. Ki lechu na lekomi asher b'Shilo, sheshikanti sham barishona, urut asher asido pnei ra'at Am Yisrael. He talks about the Churban. He says, you know, the problem there is Am Yisrael doesn't believe there will be a Churban. So Yirmiyahu comes and says, you don't believe about the Churban? Go look what happened to Shiloh. Now, what happened to Shiloh? Shiloh was destroyed. It has never been rebuilt to this very day. If you go tomorrow morning to Shiloh, still nothing over there. It's gone forever. And Yirmiyahu was Yirmiyahu was trying to convince them that the Beit HaMikdash is not indestructible. So he says, go to Shiloh. Let me continue the next pasuk. I skipped here a bit. Vishlach vasiti labayit asher nikra shmi alav asher atem botchim bo. He threatens them point blank. I'll do it to Yerushalayim what I did to Shiloh. Now, what did he do to Shiloh? I said before, Shiloh was destroyed, never to return, never. And by the way, if you look at the keynote, and the Rav mentions this in the book in the keynote that with Rav's interpretations, we say early on in the keynote in Tisha B'Av morning, Pachad chet Shiloh tachaf sodeha. The Am Yisrael was in shock because of the fear that would happen to her, what happened to Shiloh. And what happened to Shiloh is total destruction. Now, Yirmiyahu continues, Vishlachti etchem me'al panai, kasher ishlachti et kol achichem, et kol zera Ephraim. Here it is. What's he saying to them? He's saying to them, I will do to you like Aseret HaShvatim. You will be like Aseret HaShvatim. What does that mean? That means everything is terminated. You sold down the river. The same way you sell a slave. You basically, once you disinvested, gone. Never ever to meet him again. Now, all of this is said in Chazal. Chazal tell us, Am Yisrael came to Yechezkel after the Churban and said to Yechezkel, Eved shemecharo rabo klum yesh lo alav. If the Eved has been sold by the Rav, does the relationship continue? It doesn't. The relationship remains, the relationship is gone. If I have a piece of property, I sell it, that's it. I can never see it again. And Am Yisrael thought, because Baruch Hu terminated the relationship. And they had no way of knowing. This idea, I said before, of a cycle of exile and redemption, galut, geulah, this cycle was never established up to that point. And it was Yirmiyahu's great zechut later on, Sefer Yirmiyahu, to begin to talk about the Shavu Vanim Ligvulam. But it was totally not clear to them. The reason Yirmiyahu was talking about the Shavu Vanim Ligvulam, because no one was aware of such a model. Now, this is where Yirmiyahu was in Sefer Eicha. And let's go back now to Sefer Eicha and understand what's bothering him. What's bothering him more than anything else is this. It's not the loss of the Mikdash per se. It's not the monumental loss. It is the termination of the relationship. Now, if you think about it for a moment, an almanah, it's an ambiguous metaphor. On the one hand, the husband's gone. She can't reconnect. On the other hand, of course, the almanah is not like the grusha. When you get divorced, you sever the connection and you sever the relationship. The almanah maintains a relationship. It's not physical. You can't realize it physically, but the relationship remains. The husband of the almanah remains her husband. And she's very much invested in memorializing him and remembering him. You have a relationship. It's just not b'olam hazeh, but the relationship continues. Yirmiyahu remembers very well that in the beginning of Sefer Yirmiyahu, in Perek Gimel, Yirmiyahu told Am Yisrael, he described in terms of a divorce. Hey, yishalach ish et ishto. And Yirmiyahu threatened them in God's name with a divorce. Right? If you remember what we read, B'ezrat Hashem there in the summer, Yeshayahu will come and say, no, it wasn't a divorce. Right? Eza sefer kitutim v'chem sheshilachtia. In the Nechama, Yeshayahu will bang his fist and tell us it was never divorce. It was it was not a divorce. It was only a galut. Yirmiyahu was not sure of this. So it begins by Haitaki Almanah. But he doesn't know where he's going from here. And Sefer Eicha does not begin with discussion of the destruction or the loss. He does that later on. It begins with a discussion of the loss of connection. if you chronologically, it's not describing the year of the Churban. It's describing 5-10 years later. The desolation, the fact that Eretz Yehuda is alone. It's describing simply the loneliness. Eicha yashva badad. Badad, also from the nations, but mainly and primarily from the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Ha'ir abatiyam eita ke'almana. It's the sense that God severs connection, that we're all alone. That's what really meant. That is what really concerns him. And now, and it's loneliness because no one can come and tell her, guaranteed the relationship continues. Now comes Perek Gimel. Let's go now to Yecha Perek Gimel and see what's going on over there. Un momento. Okay, let's go back to the beginning of the parak. Yirmiyahu is reflecting upon the Churban. Right, I said before the Kohelet reflects, Yirmiyahu also reflects. And now he's trying to reflect upon the Churban, but what is he doing? Ani hagever ani b'shevet evrato. Right, he said, I observe all of the suffering. Now, what's he's mainly describing here, and we'll see about the Psukim, he's not describing so much the destruction and the suffering. For that, you have to go to Perek Bet and Perek Dalet. And there he does describe the suffering. What he's mainly discussing here is the sense that God is out to get him. That because Baruch Hu intentionally is taking aim at him. Right, he's guiding me into the abyss. Because it's not I'm stumbling it. It's not that I'm stumbling it into the abyss alone. God is purposely taking me there. He's dumping me over there. Because Baruch Hu is constantly attacking me. I'm skipping a bit, but not a lie. Right? He's building. He's mobilizing resources to attack me. But not a lie. I'm skipping here a bit. Here, the important pasuk, pasuk Yud Bet. Darach kashto vayatziveni kematara lachetz. He made me into a target. God is shooting at me like at a target. I've been targeted. I've been singled out. This is not suffering because God is indifferent to the world. This is not that nature causes suffering. This is you've been singled out because Baruch is doing this to you on purpose, and it's personal. Darach kashto ve'tziveni kamatra lachetz hevi b'chiliotai kol b'nei hashpato. It's the exact same thing. It's saying a bit more poetic. It's a fancier way of saying that he's shooting arrow after arrow into me on purpose. Hevi b'chiliotai. He's taking direct aim at me with his arrows. By the way, there are a whole bunch of psukim in Eov, which are very, very similar formulations. The language is very similar and the same idea, that it's not by accident, it's by design. That the suffering is by design and by divine design. I'm skipping here a bit. Now comes the crucial point. When God takes aim at you, when God picks up his bow and arrow and he begins targeting you, it could mean one of two very different things. It could mean you're being singled out could mean that you're on God's radar because Baruch Hu cares about you. The fact that he singles you out is a good sign. He's angry. He wants to punish you. He has his rules. And he has his hashgacha, which will deal which may deal harshly with you. But you are being treated. Treatment implies care, it implies a relationship, or to put it in the phrase of Sefer Amos, I chose only you from all the nations. Therefore, you pay the price of your sins because you've been chosen. That is that's Amos, and that's very comforting. Now, you pay the price; it'll be painful, but the relationship will be stored. You can view it differently, of course. God is letting it out on you, and He's causing so much suffering because He's going to dismiss you, right? He's shooting all these arrows because He thinks that He's so angry and so upset with you. He's going to dump you at the end of it. The more he finishes with the target, He's going to throw it out. And this is what Yirmiyahu doesn't know. And this is he's struggling with his soul. Zot ashiv elibi al kain ochil. This is what I'll tell myself. This is my dilemma, my inner struggle. Which of these two directions? Is it indifference or is it the reverse? Is it treatment? Zot ashiv elibi al kain ochil. This is what I'll tell myself. I will have hope. Al kain ochil. And the phrase ochil, and various mentions of it, will appear here prominently now. Chasdei Hashem kilo tamnu, kilo chalu rachamav. God's favor remains with us. Chadashim akir ba'amunatecha, the trustworthiness, the faithfulness remain. Chelki Hashem amra nafshi. I say, what do I say to my soul? That my place is with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Chelki Hashem, my chelik, my particular part, my connection remains. Chelki Hashem amra nafshi. I throw my lot in with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. I trust that my lot remains with Him. Chelki Hashem, I say it's Chelki Hashem. God is my lot, and I trust that He views it as well. Al kain ochilo. I maintain the relationship. I view Him as the Kadosh Baruch Hu, and my hope and prayer is Al kain ochilo, that He views it the same way. Tov v'yachil v'dumam. You stay silently awaiting with hope Kadosh Baruch Hu's decision and His delivery. Tov v'yachil v'dumam li'tzurat Hashem. Now he discusses the need for punishment. It's important to pay the price, but to recognize that it's a process of redemption. It's a process of tikkun. Notice here once more, like in Eov as well, you're in the dumps. But if you recognize that's a therapeutic, spiritual therapeutic process, you can bear with it. Yitain b'afar pihu, it'd be disgusting. There'll be real suffering. However, ulai yish tikva. There's hope that this is only, rather than a loss of relationship, this only will bring about, it will repair the relationship, and this is the price which has to be paid along the way. Ulai yesh tikva. Is he convinced to know? Ulai yesh tikva. Maybe there's hope. Yitain l'makehu lechi. Let me explain to you. He's not talking here about Ravad Yosef giving someone a stirat lechi out of fondness. He's talking about Gestapo. He's talking here about Roman soldiers for whom human life is dirt. He's talking Yitain l'makehu lechi is babi cherpa. This is real suffering. I said before, he recognizes, and he'll detail this in Perek Daled, he recognizes the immense price of the suffering. But more than that, what he really cares about is Yitain l'makehu lechi ki lo yiznach li'olam Hashem. The Kadosh Baruch Hu will not neglect us. The relationship will remain. Lo yiznach. That, at the end of the day, is what really matters. Ki lo yiznach le'olam Hashem. Kimo Gavericham, because Baruch have mercy. At the end of the day, the relationship will be restored. Now he continues. I'm skipping here a bit. Now this is what happens when he comes to the climax. He's not dealing here in philosophy or theology. Who's to blame for evil in the world? And is it proper or not that the wicked prosper when the righteous suffer? That's not, he's concerned with one thing, is what's happening to him and Am Yisrael, as opposed to the Babylonians and others. He's not concerned now with the philosophy of that. He's concerned, does the relationship remain? And his conclusion is, yes. Nach besad derachenu v'nachkora v'nashuva ad Hashem. No, we will return. And what matters at tshuva is crucial here, not you mend your ways per se. So you return to the Kadosh Baruch Hu. But how will the Sefer conclude? Hashivenu Hashem eilecha v'nashuva. The real problem of Sefer Eicha is not to repair our ways, the way the Rambam said, that the Shuvah Tiv, that we'll be better people. It's rather, does the relationship remain? Can we return to the Kadosh Baruch Hu? Gdolat Shuvah shemagat et kisei hakavod, the Gemara says. And this is the question. He says, V'nashuv, it's not nachmasad dechen v'nachkora. It's not we'll do tshuva per se. It's nachmasad dechen v'nachkora, v'nashuva ad Hashem. We'll begin to, now he describes tefillah. Nisal l'mavenu kapayim l'kel b'shamayim. When you pray to Kadosh Baruch Hu, it means there's a relationship. You pray to He who cares about you. You pray to He who will listen to you because you are His child. Nisal l'mavenu kapayim l'kel b'shamayim. Nachnu fashal v'talo salachta, but it can be repaired. Now he describes how the relationship has deteriorated, but he describes this as a problem that can be overcome. There's a crisis. Sakota b'avatir defeinu, meaning you've concealed yourself. You're hiding. You're concealed. Sakota be'analach, you refuse to listen to our tefillot, but it's a temporary crisis. And I'm skipping out to the end of Paragimel. We're at the end of Paragimel. Tefillah resumes. It's no longer Sakota be'af me'avar l'shma tefillah. Tefillah resumes. Karati shimcha Hashem mibor tachtiyot. From the depths of life, I call out to Kadosh Baruch Hu. Koli shamata, and He listens. Koli shamata. Al talemos v'chad ravchati l'shavati. I trust and I expect that you listen because we restored the relationship. Kuli shamata al talemos necha. It's expectation already. This is no longer ula yesh tikva kilo yiznach. It's self-confidence. And the self-confidence is that we've no longer sakota be'af. It's not kuli shamata. Karavta bayom. There's a movement of coming close. He's coming forward. He's returning. Karavta bayom mekra'eka. You are coming close to me. There'll be proximity again to Am Yisrael and Kadosh Baruch Hu. And now the Kadosh Baruch Hu begins not to punish Am Yisrael. Remember before how he has the arrows and Yiten Makehu Lechi, etc. Now we're in a whole different place. Rav Tasher Bivei Nafshi. Kadosh Baruch Hu has the older brother who's going to fight the bully in our name. Kadosh Baruch Hu now is defending us. Rav Tasher Bivei Nafshi. You're going out to fight with the Goyim to save us. Ga'alta Chayai. What's Ga'alta Chayai mean? It doesn't mean that the Mikdash has been rebuilt. Yirmiyahu is not talking about building the Mikdash or returning to Eretz Yisrael. He's talking here Ga'alta Chayai, the relationship. And how does it conclude? The pasuk we're all familiar. Tirdov ba'avet tashmidei mitachat shmei Hashem. At the end of the day, Am Yisrael sinned. But Kadosh Baruch Hu is, we are His people, and He is, and therefore He will defend us against the Goyim. That's now. This, of course, will continue at the conclusion of the Sefer. Let's go there quickly. One moment. Okay, 1 second. Okay, here we are in Perek Hey. Perek Hey, it's a whole story. Not for now. Maybe next year, hopefully after Mikdash will be rebuilt. But at the end of the day, it's the same concern. Look at how does Sefer Eicha conclude? Lama lanetzach tishkachenu. See, Perek Hey complains about the fact that the Galut is going on for a long, long time. This is not 2 years after the Churban. This is hundreds of years later. And Yirmiyahu is not complaining. It hasn't come to fruition. We haven't. The cycle hasn't come full circle yet. Lama lanetzach tishkachenu tazel yamim. It's the same dilemma. Has Kadosh Baruch Hu forsaken us and gotten rid of us, or not? Does the fact that it's galut for hundreds of years tell us that really, at the end of the day, he terminated the relationship, or not? Lama netzach tishkachenu is ma'os me'astanu katzavta aleinu ad me'od indicative of a termination, or no? It's just a long, long cycle. Right, so Pasuk Chafal tells us, and of course we all know that the resounding answer to Katzaf Le'ad Me'od, we repeat Pasuk Chafal. When you're confident, at the end of the day, indeed it's been returned. Now, this plays itself out in many different places on Tisha B'Av. To conclude, I'll just say the following. This really is the essential drama. The essential drama is because Baruch HaMisrael stay in touch or not. Because as I said before, losing the home is bad, but the relationship continues, and you wander together. Losing the relationship, it's all over. Chazal make this point in a different form. Chazal tell us in a famous midrash, I said Kotu Midashim really. One midrash is that the Churban really is pointless. The Goyim did nothing. You were basically grinding flour. Why? Because the Mikdash was destroyed the moment that Am Yisrael and Kadosh Baruch Hu lost the relationship. The moment Kadosh Baruch Hu decided to leave the Mikdash, it was just a building. When Kadosh Baruch Hu dwelt there, it wasn't the building. It was the stage for a relationship. When Am Yisrael and Kadosh Baruch Hu would meet in Kodesh HaKodashim, when Am Yisrael and Kadosh Baruch Hu would meet in the Mikdash was the stage. It was the place. For those of you here, that was the capsula in which Am Yisrael and the Kadosh Baruch Hu met. But the moment Kadosh Baruch Hu left, it was simply a big empty house. It was like, think for a moment, someone has a nice suburban home, and all of a sudden there's a divorce. So the same rooms, basically, it's no longer a nice home. It's no longer a home. It's simply an annoying, it's a sad, annoying, empty house. And this is what the Mikdash was after Kadosh Baruch Hu left. And different Chazal say that basically the Churban happened not when the torch set flame to the Mikdash. It happened when Kadosh Baruch Hu left. Now, there is. I will now allow myself to speak a bit. The point I'm going to make now is basically from the Rav. It's in his. It's in the Kinos book, and it's one of the main themes of that book, actually. Tisha B'Av, therefore, in a sense, is a tragedy. It's a day of loss, of suffering, of tragedy, but also of nechama. Because we paid one price, but we didn't pay the ultimate price. We paid the price of losing the Mikdash. We paid the price because God was angry and furious with us. We paid the price of disfavor, sakota be'af. I think each and everybody here in this meeting has probably experienced the time which his parents are angry, disappointed in him. He's probably experienced the time which the parents express not too subtly the anger and disappointment, and he knows what a horrible feeling it is. But nevertheless, a good parent always gives you a sense, you pay the price, we move on. The relationship is not threatened. And that's what happened to Tisha B'Av. It could have been Chas v'Shalom much, much, much worse. And now there's a midrash. The midrash is like this: Mizmor le'asaf Elokim ba'u b'nachlatecha timur techal kodshecha sam yishrayim le'iyim. Mizmor le'asaf. The Goyim came and destroyed the mikdash. They violated it. They devastated the mikdash. They violated it, etc., etc. So the Chazal say Mizmor le'asaf, kina le'asaf mi baile. It should be a kina, not a mizmor. And what's the answer? No, it's a mizmor. Sheshafach chamatol etzim avanim. He took it out on the etzim avanim. Think for a moment about a parent who is furious with a child, and rightfully so. Instead of hitting the child in a way that will cause the relationship to suffer immensely, he kicks something else. He takes it out on something else. That's what Chazal tell us. Because Baruch Hu, like he kicked the cabinet and not the child. Or more important, he may have slapped the child, but he remained a child. And now there's a transition in Tisha B'Av between the morning and the afternoon. The Rav spoke about this a lot. In the morning, it's more kina, it's more morning and avelus and kinos. In the afternoon, it's much more nechama and nichum avelim and the sense of comfort. It has many expressions: Kriyas Torah, Nachem, etc. Now, you could just say that the day is a dynamic. You begin on a low point and you progress. The Rav, though, tied it into something else, which is Chazal tell us, paradoxically, that the Mikdash was actually burnt late afternoon of the 9th of Av. The Rav saw that not as a cause for Avelus, but for Nechama. Why? Because the way the Rav describes it, because Baruch was weighing in the balance these two options. The option of disconnecting, the option of basically dismissing Am Yisrael, selling them down the river, and his promise to Avraham Avinu he'd fulfill in some other way, like through Yirmiyahu or whatever, or to destroy the building and maintain the relationship. Because Baruch was deliberating, Kaviyachal, and when the Babylonian soldier, took the match and threw in the torch, the decision fell. The decision was to destroy the building, but to maintain the relationship. And that is exactly the Nechama. So Yirmiyahu struggles with this in Perek Gimel, towards the end of Perek Hey, but the conclusion is that Tisha B'Av has within a deep comfort. Because even when we really were deserving to be dismissed totally, because Baruch Hu is an Av, he's Avinu Shebashamayim, and he doesn't do it. Yirmiyahu will state this in concisely, or I say like this. Yirmiyahu will say, if you compare Gimel Daled, Yirmiyahu will talk about the fact that a divorce is irreversible. After there's been betrayal, the divorce is irreversible. But then, because Rav said, it doesn't matter. You're not my wife. You're my children, and children cannot be divorced. Shuva banim shovavim erpam shuvotechem. Yeshayahu will take a step further. Yeshayahu will tell us that it wasn't a divorce. And Yirmiyahu will say it was a divorce, but the parent-child relationship remains. Yeshayahu will say it wasn't even a divorce. But for that, we won't be able to appreciate Yeshayahu until we properly experience the 3 weeks, first of all. So first I have to experience the loss. I focused upon the Nechama. But I think you have to realize that if this is the Nechama, imagine the disappointment Imagine the letdown that Am Yisrael gave to Kodesh Baruch Hu. I said before, some relationships, we don't mind letting people down because we're not letting them down. You know, you have a business relationship, you disappoint someone, big deal. It's a business relationship, and he'll live with it. And, you know, just it's a question of money. You know, in the army, you don't do what you're supposed to do. It's not a personal relationship. In school, it depends. I remember a childhood friend of mine who told me that, that he was supposed to be expelled from a camp, and he was devastated. And I said to him, but I understand, you're expelled from school twice a week, and, you're never upset at all. He told me, of course not. School is only school, but a camp is a camp. Okay, at the end, I think they kept him on at the end. But so the point is that relationships, it depends what it is. The deepest of your parents, I think the most difficult thing a person can do, one of the most distressing, difficult experiences in life is disappointing your parents. Deep down, one of our most basic needs is to feel that we find favor in our parents' eyes. And everyone's dying to know what his parents think about the shidduch. The parents never tell you because they can't, but everyone's dying to know what your parents think about your shidduch or about many other things you do. And the most difficult experience in life is feeling that you let your parents down, that you disappointed them. So first, now parents, I said before, they won't leave you. But first understand why the 3 weeks are such a difficult time, and why they're a time of tshuva, and why they're a time in which we really should engage, be serious and earnest, and not, happy-go-lucky like we are the whole year round. Because this is the 3 weeks a year which take into account how much we disappointed Kadosh Baruch Hu, how much we disappointed him, how much we caused him to feel that we let him down. So Baruch Hashem, we know that he didn't sever the relationship. Dafka, because of that, it's so upsetting to feel that we let him down. Because of that, we have to go really and do everything into both maintaining and improving the relationship. And secondly, mending our ways. In B'ezrat Hashem, Hashiveinu Hashem Eilecha v'nashuva, Chadesh Yameinu Kikedem. Toda Rabbah, you should have a wonderful summer because Baruch Hu should watch over everybody. Be careful. It's really not a joke. Pikuach nefesh is pikuach nefesh. Sakanta chamir me'isura. Watch over yourselves. Be careful, even though it's a camp. And B'ezrat Hashem, you should have a wonderful summer. And the 3 weeks are some of the most important spiritual times of the year. Use them, utilize them. B'ezrat Hashem, you'll then be able to. Well, let me just point out that we respond to Tisha B'Av in 10 Haftarot, 3 before, 7 afterwards. It means the response to Tisha B'Av will take us to Rosh Hashanah. So if you experience the 3 weeks properly and the Shabbat and the Chemta afterwards, you then come to Rosh Hashanah ready to meet Kadosh Baruch Hu on Rosh Hashanah properly. So you should have the Siyata D'Shmaya to do it and to really to utilize and to absorb the meaning of these days. Good relationships, their root is always in these periods. Your relationship is best with your wife after a fight, if you maintain the relationship, because it causes you to think things through and to understand how important the relationship is for you. And therefore use the 3 weeks to understand how important the relationship is and how much we have to really make sure that we don't disappoint Kadosh Baruch Hu again. Toda Rabba.
Rav Moshe, thank you so much. Now that you have given a shiur to us here in Indoor World, you are officially entitled to an Indoor World bracelet. So we'll be making sure to bring this back to Israel for you, along with other swag here from
Okay, you can bring that back and bring somebody in America. There's a few other things to bring back, so you're welcome.
Yes, you can make a list. We're happy to bring whatever you want. We have an army of people coming back to Israel. So since you will not be traveling here for a little while, presumably, anything that you need, of course, we'd be happy to help with. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure. One of the best decisions I ever made in my life was going to Gush and being a part of this institution, hopefully for the rest of my life. And all the people I'm connected with is something that I truly treasure and look forward to. And I know everyone else does as well. So thank you so much for a beautiful shiur on such a meaningful day for all of us here at Camp Stone and around the world. Yeah, I think we don't have 100 people here, so we definitely had a lot of participants outside of Camp Stone that joined us, which was wonderful. And I'm glad that they were all able to be here. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Okay, Tadabat, thank you very, very much. And Hashem, hi, Menachem. Hi. How are you?
Send over your card. Send me your card.
Okay, we got everyone's already 5 minutes also. Say there.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Kol Tuv and Shabbat Shalom also.
Okay, take care. Okay, bye everybody.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.